Good evening and welcome once again to this episode of It's My Turn Now, where everyone gets an opportunity to just share your thoughts, share your uh, what's going on with you today, and whatever is on your mind. Each week we have a subject that I think is of importance, a subject that touches the lives of so many people, especially on today. We have a subject uh, that's a very serious topic, and that's dealing with suicide. Uh, we'll get into some of the statistics of individuals who commit suicide. And I think it's important that we address that as much as this is Suicide Awareness Month, because there are so many people that have committed suicide. And one of the things I hear often is that I did not even know that they were having any problems. So oftentimes, people are dealing with suicide ideation, and no one even is aware of the fact that they're going through. So hopefully, we can talk about some of the signs that you can detect uh, in your family member or your friends who may be contemplating suicide. Many times, the stress, anxiety, and life can cause a lot of people affecting so many different ways. So hopefully, you'll get something out of this today. I want you to feel free to share. Share the broadcast, share with your friends, call your friends, text them, join the program. Uh, Also, it's on my YouTube page under Dr. Anthony Walton. If you want to follow me on my YouTube page and subscribe to it, we would love for you to do that as well. We're going to bring on our first guest on and welcome her to the program. Welcome to It's My Turn Now.
It's my turn now.
All right, I like that. I like that. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Janice Fleming, or Pastor Janice is what
All
people in
right.
All Nation Chicago call me. And I am originally from Indianapolis, and I worked as a school counselor in Indianapolis and also in Chicago Public Schools. And now I'm helping serve the Generations Department at my church. So that's kids, youth, young adults, and our champions.
Okay, very good. So you wear a number of different hats. Not only are you active within the church, you're active within the community, and you just recently completed a project this weekend. Tell us about that real quick.
Sure, you probably saw photos from the Circle City Classic. So I've been working with the Circle City Classic coronation since either 2014 or 2015. And then I served as chair from 2016 until last year.
Oh,
So I still am on the committee, but I'm no longer chair. But what happens is young ladies that are seniors in high school in Central Indiana compete to become Miss Circle City Classic. And so that competition takes place the Sunday before the Circle City Classic, which comes, the following Saturday. And so I was able to help and serve that committee. Is something I appreciate that I appreciate the committee and the coronation. I was Miss Circle City Classic in 2004, so it's near and dear to my heart. I know firsthand what impact that involvement had on me, and so I like to pay it forward to those young ladies.
all right, very good. And the reason why I mentioned that is because some statistics would tell you that's a vulnerable age, teenagers, freshmen in college, then there's so much pressure, and I'm sure you saw that in that pageant where the young ladies are under a lot of pressure. Everybody wants to win, but everyone want to be one winner. And so we're going to talk about throughout the program different things, different situations that allow the pressure, people who are pressured to the point that it will cause them to contemplate suicide. Now, I'm so blessed. Sister Shirley Walton says, she said, praise the Lord, everyone. Thank you. Praise the Lord to you also. She says, she shared it. So thank you again. Encourage, let us know if you shared it. Text us, let us know they shared. Now I'm going to bring on someone else, someone that I'm pretty familiar with. Tell us who you are and a little about yourself.
Hello, it is my turn now. I am Christina Walton. I have been working in mental health for 5 going on 6 years. I did most of my work in residential at a residential facility until just recently, and I'm in my last year in my social work practicum for my MSW. So yeah, so I'm doing my practicum at local and IPS K through 12th grade, so a lot of different ages, and continuing to do like clinical mental health and therapy essentially.
Good. Very good. We do have Rachel Wright who be on later on. She let me know that she would not be on exactly when the program starts, but whenever she's able to, we're going to look for her to come on. Again, the subject tonight is suicide, and that's something that so many people have dealt with, and some people are transparent about it. Not, I imagine more people have at least contemplated it than who have actually carried it out. And there are a number of things that can, there are factors that can cause a person to feel to the point in their life that their life is so hopeless that they are thinking of committing suicide, which is really, life can be overwhelming for some. A number of times I work with suicide and crisis line, so I dealt with that firsthand on a weekly basis. I mean, these individuals were calling because, that was their final call before they actually commit suicide. Now, I'm blessed that I never had one of my associates never had one to commit suicide. However, some of the individuals did actually have individuals to actually commit suicide. Some even online on the call. So it's serious, So, but we're gonna let you ladies talk and just tell us some of your experiences. I'm gonna start with you, Pastor. Tell us your experience.
Sure. So, unfortunately, I had a middle school student who committed suicide in the fall of 2020. And that, for me as an educator, was probably the hardest thing I had ever experienced. Before that, I had several students who either were showing signs, and so I had to take them to the behavioral health hospital. They were
Mhm.
hospitalized for a couple of days, some of them longer.
Mhm.
Um, but this was a time where I had a student that followed through and unfortunately committed suicide. And it was hard because for many of us, we didn't know. And especially as an educator, this was during the time where we were all working virtually. And so it wasn't, like I would see her in the hallways, and I had had conversations with her before, March 2020 happened.
Mhm.
And so after the fact, I didn't check in with her as much. Also, there were 1,100 students, so it was really difficult for me to really check in on people. And so the signs weren't as clear, not even to this young lady's parents. And
Right.
then, um, unfortunately, I've had family members who have not committed suicide, but have had suicidal ideation, and it is a very, very serious thing. And so I'm really appreciative of the fact that we are addressing it, especially
Mhm.
because for many people it's almost taboo, or people are afraid to address it, or they feel ashamed that they're
Mhm.
having those sorts of feelings. And so I'm grateful that you're providing this platform for us to have these types of conversations.
Now, we have a very, very good audience. They're pretty much up to date, but you use some words like suicide ideation, and there may be someone that may not quite exactly know what you're referring to. So if you can just share what you mean by that.
I can, but I feel like Christina might have a more clinical definition. So please correct me if I'm wrong. But if you're experiencing suicidal ideation, it's saying that you are experiencing feelings that you may do it, and you even have a thought. You've thought out a plan.
Okay. You know, I'll go ahead and let you address that, and then I'm going to add to that, Christina. Did you want anything to that?
Yeah. So I mean, kind of, the population that I work with or had worked with previously had most of them had like previous suicide attempts, which is like that next step from it's like
Mm-hmm.
suicide ideation, suicide attempts, and then the follow through. But it was more so like a lockdown facility, so they were on guard 24/7. But you see things like a lot of self harm with intent um, for suicide. I personally have not had any clients or anyone that I have worked with, commit suicide, but just listening to the news every day and seeing schools and like Pastor was saying, just people that you wouldn't even expect. Unfortunately, you don't want to expect anybody, but I feel like a lot here recently, we're seeing people who show no signs, which I'm sure we'll get into that later, or who you just don't expect to, make that decision. But yeah, so the suicide ideation, you nailed it. Just that thought and maybe like a plan. And um, yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to share, Christine. Uh, suicide ideation is when you're thinking about, you're contemplating, you're just thinking about it, because a lot of people, you can have a rough day, and people can think about, man, I'm just, what it'd be like just not to be here any longer. But when we're assessing for suicide, we deal first with suicide ideation. Secondly, do you have a plan? Now, when a person has a plan, then that becomes more serious, because they know what they're going to do. So that means they carry the thought out. And so
Then you
then
ask about the means, if they have the
exactly.
means.
So next, somebody said, well, how would he kill himself? Well, somebody said, well, maybe I'm going to shoot myself. Well, question next is, do you have a gun in the house? If they don't have a gun in the house, that's a little bit better. But if they say, I keep the gun right next to me, I'm thinking about it, I don't know what to do, or not, and that's when it becomes serious. So many times, I had a client one time in a session who told me that, and so immediately I had to spring into action and get some, because he had the means. The one guy told me, he said, I'm gonna run into a tree, and I've actually, attempted to do it before, and so. There are a lot of things that can cause people to consider suicide. But just a statistic said in 2020, 46,000 people died by suicide. One death every 11 minutes. That's overwhelming. One death every 11 minutes. So that means we've been on this program approximately 11 minutes. That means one person has actually commit suicide. Now, I think it's important that we are sensitive. We're sensitive to the call, and I've heard people who say, you know what, I don't take them serious. They've said that before, and they said, I think that's one of the worst misnomers, to say that we're not going to take them serious. It's not really serious what they're doing, because anytime someone tells you they're going to commit suicide, you have to take them serious. Now, one thing, Pastor Janice, you were saying that you had a student. What was the age? Just out of curiosity, what was the age of the student?
7th grade. I think she was 12.
12, and that's awful young, And so there's a lot of emotions involved. We as adults will say, you're 12 years old, you don't have any problem, you don't have no worry, you don't have no concern. But we don't ever want to minimize anyone's issues. Even you too, young ladies, you young ladies are grown, but you have issues that are unique to you all. And sometimes there's pressure. There's a lot of pressure when you're a teenager, peer pressure. But when you get older, there's performance pressure. There's pressure to perform, and that can be overwhelming at times. So I'll go ahead and let you tell us, Christine, what were some of the experience you said you had some of the young ladies you deal with? Did they talk to you about suicide, or what was your experience?
Yeah, so it was a lot of high risk adolescents for that. So we did a lot of assessments. The good thing was that they were, in a lockdown facility. So we were able to, 24-hour observation, but a lot of them dealt with pressures. It doesn't have to be something necessarily super traumatic that happens, just like kind of like you talked about. And not to negate anything that trauma, but just like the pressures of school, or pressures the parents put on the children, or just what I am learning is a lot of kids, they spend a lot of time in school, 40 hours a week, and there's so much that goes on in the school system. You can try to protect your kids, and I'm sure that is what these parents are doing. But when they go to school for 8 hours a day, they're exposed to so much, and they might go home and not even say a word to their parents or anything about what's going on. So that's something that I've noticed a lot lately, just even with bullying. I know you hear the word, but that is huge in the adolescents and even the younger ones, that makes them, have those suicidal ideations and suicidal thoughts or low self-esteem. That's something that I have noticed in working with these ages. And then performance pressures and peer pressures for the youth as well. I think that is something so big. It's just a lot of different factors that go into play. And then you add on the trauma piece, and a lot of them feel defeated and do not find the worth in their life. And that is what I have seen throughout the years, unfortunately.
And the big one, neither one you mentioned, social media. The pressure of social media. Can you imagine when we were coming up, before you ladies, when we were coming up, you can make a mistake and those around you saw it, and they'd tell their friends. But now with social media, everyone's videotaping it. You used to be on was it World Star or whatever, and it may go viral. So now you're carrying that over and over and over again. So the pressures become greater. The social acceptance becomes greater. A lot of individuals have committed suicide because of something that was said on social media. That happens a lot, and that's something we didn't have to worry about, but is issue concern. Have either you dealt with that, or has someone talked to you about an experience that they had because of social media?
For sure. We're both shaking our heads, but unfortunately, because of social media, is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? So when you leave the school, or I guess from my context, that's what I was thinking the most about when students would leave the school at 3 o'clock. Social media is still present. In fact,
Right.
it's even more because people are on that now because they're not in class, where they can't have their cell phones or their devices. You don't have weekends away from social media. There's more social media access during those times when you're not in school. So it used to be that if you were teased or bullied in any way, it wasn't good, but at least you knew it was over when you left the school.
Right.
Unfortunately, now it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on multiple platforms. And like you said, it can, if there's coverage or media that's connected to it, whether it's a photo or a video or something, it only compounds the level, and then also the pressure. So we probably have all attempted to compare ourselves to other people, but with social media, people tend to post the best parts of their lives.
Right.
And so as viewers, we think, oh my goodness, this person's life is so amazing, so wonderful. And then you look back at yourself, well, man, like,
And
how come
man,
I can't do that? How come I'm not there doing that? And as a student or as a child, well, even as adults, no matter where you are in the stage of development, even if your prefrontal cortex is fully developed, you can compare yourself to others and think that something is inherently wrong with you because of what you don't have yet or haven't reached yet. Or even, as I get older, I have to fight against the urge to say, oh my goodness, other women at 35 have done this, they've done this, they've done this, and I haven't. Like, what's wrong? And so no matter where you are on the spectrum, you have to be careful with social media because it's scary if you allow it to infiltrate your heart and your head.
Right. I'm actually working on my 6th book, and I'm covering that area of women comparing themselves to other women. I have a chapter that I'm actually dealing with that. Now, you brought another term out, frontal cortex. You want to, break that down for us? And
I'll do my best. Christina, again, jump in. Well, both of you as resident experts on that, but your brain is continuing to develop. Most people are familiar, like as a kid, you can't drop the kid on their head because their skull, they have that soft spot is still developing. Well, your brain continues to develop and grow, and there's different parts, but the very front part, usually about 24, mid-20s is when it's fully developed. And so before that, there's different stages of development from zero, really your whole lifespan, but
Right.
up until the point where that is developed, there's parts, especially as it relates to comparing yourself or like having the wisdom or the knowledge to understand and experience some things you can't fully understand because your concept of it at certain ages isn't as wise as it becomes later in life. And so that's kind of what I was meaning when I was talking about that.
And so at certain ages, there's developmental stages, as you said. And so young people are not able to think, process things as a mature adult. And there's a certain level where they, even as you said, when you get to be an adult, sometimes we have a hard time processing it. But young kids, in particular, are not able to process it. That's why I think it's important what parents say to the kids too. Parents can be very instrumental. I deal with a lot of clients, kids who parents may say something to them and they don't recognize how detrimental it is to that child, the emotional state of that child. Sister Darlene Morrell, God bless you. Thanks for joining us. My turn now. Says, praise Jesus. She was on last week, did a tremendous job on last week. Sister Jamie Gonzalez said, have you ever had someone tell you that a significant other would take their life after a breakup? And after saying it so many times, you say, you on the other side, is there power play? I don't want you want to address that. Do you understand the question? Do you need to read it again?
I think so. So I mostly do work. I mean, I've worked with nothing but adolescents minus my practicum, but even with them, they have been in these situations where, someone they were dating at the time was like, you're going to stay with me or else I'm going to, kill myself. And unfortunately, they were in a spot to, leave the situation. And I do think sometimes it can be a power play, but when people say things like that, there's clearly something going on with them that in which they need help. So I do think you should take those things seriously, but also have enough strength in yourself to get away from that situation. But yeah, I think that actually does happen often with people who probably in couples who both battle with mental health struggles. And sometimes it is a power play, but I still feel that the talk of suicide and so on, saying those things should not be taken lightly.
So true.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, especially with the point, like it can be manipulation, but sometimes people don't, people really might feel like if you leave, like that might be what they actually feel. So just like Christina said, you have to take it seriously. And so I think like, just like you said, letting someone know. So, if you're dealing with students, let a trusted adult at their school, church, organization, team, whatever that is, know. Letting a parent know if there's a professional that you have access to, or someone that, even if it's a crisis line, call the crisis line and make sure that, you're providing those steps, because once you do, that person's mental health is not solely your responsibility.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, maybe for your own mental health, that might be the reason why you need the breakup. And so you have to consider yourself. You absolutely have to. And there are ways that you can consider that other person while still putting yourself first.
Right. And what we're saying too, as you talk about frontal cortex, some people are not able to think past their immediate feelings. So because they're unable to pass, they think, well, I'll show them. They don't take me serious. So they don't think that, it's hurting you. It's not going to hurt them, because they're going to go on. They going later on, when you're dead and gone, they're going to go on and get a life, marry somebody else or whoever, and so they don't think about that because they don't have the ability to completely process beyond that. And so what you said was very good. You cannot be held responsible for someone's action. No one can be responsible for a person's action. They choose to make the decisions that they do. But many times people want you to feel guilty about what they're doing. So what you have to do is, probably to alert and to work with them to get the proper help that they need. Because like you said, you don't want to get caught up in a situation where you then become you become victimized. You're actually the one that's held hostage to this person. And I've seen it happen before, and it really doesn't work out. I mean, eventually, how long you're going to be hanging in there for a while with somebody that is really not meeting or what may be your emotional needs or whatever need that you have, and that person not meeting their need. After a while, it's not going to work out. And so either now or later, eventually is the breakup is going to happen. Or then it depends on how psychotic they are. They may say, well, I'm going to take you with me. And then we're dealing with a whole different ball game. So I think that's a very good question, Jamie. So it's something that we have to think about. It happens quite frequently. Mm-hmm. I hear about it often, and the person feels guilty. They're with that person, and you're not really helping them. The best thing you can do is try to give them the type of help that they need. Sister Deborah Menora said all persons may not express themselves and say that they will harm themselves. how can one recognize a person has a problem? That's a very good question, Sister Nora. How can you recognize someone has a problem? Because some people show signs, and some people say, "I never saw it coming. I never saw it coming." So I'll let you ladies address that.
My first thought is an abrupt change in behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're super outgoing, then all of a sudden they get really quiet, or the opposite. If they're really quiet, now they have outbursts, they're angry, or they, are laughing all the time or trying to get attention all the time. If you see an abrupt change in behavior, I would say pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then listen to their language. So even if they don't specifically say, I want to harm myself, if you listen to the type of language that they have, you can kind of hear if they're going down a trail that shows that they have like negative thought patterns. And I think those are two important things to pay attention to. And then after Christina answers, can I like offer my thoughts on what you should do if you think someone is expressing this sort of thing?
Yeah. Okay.
No, I completely agree. Those abrupt changes in behavior, and I like how you brought up. It might not be someone sad and down all the time. It could be the opposite, to where they're happy, or they might be doing what's the word? Impulsive things, or it could be something like spending lots of money or something. Because this could be things that like, okay, I want to do all these things before I, follow through the act. So it could be that like impulsive things that like, okay, you haven't done this before. So just things like that, just kind of being intentional and paying attention to a person's behavior, verbiage, like you stated, and those shifts in moods or behaviors. And then I guess, we'll talk about
and then
after.
Then a more or less so sign is all of a sudden they're giving away things that are so important to them. Hey, I want you to have this right here. And that they really value that. They would, it's almost that they would normally not part from this, and they want to start giving away things. And so there are a lot, like I said, there are changes in behavior. There are a lot of signs that you can tell. But unfortunately, there are individuals that do not give a clue. Some signs, or someone said, well, I just wonder what life be if I wasn't here. What would you do if I wasn't here? Those are things that, are signs. Like say, it would be a normal conversation. The average person wouldn't think much of that. What would life be if I wasn't here? And just things like that. So, there are some signs. There's some signs that we just don't know. Some people can just be overwhelmed. And, not only do we deal, and we're going to let you guys discuss how to deal with it, but there, not only do we deal with young people dealing with suicide, and I want to talk about, hopefully have enough time, there are pastors. There are an alarming amount of pastors who are ministering to people every day, who are answering people's questions, and are contemplating suicide. Not too long, there was a therapist, mental health therapist, that committed suicide. They're telling other people. So, you would think, wow, they have all the answers. But, sometimes people are able to tell other people, but when it comes to their own, it comes to applying to themselves, they find it hard. And sometimes people are overwhelmed in the profession because they're dealing with, and they're taking all this. And so, we have to deal with self-care. That's something else. But Sister Janice, we'll start with you. That's a very good question, Sister Deborah. Sister Janice, we'll start with you because I think you're ready to get in there and share,
I just didn't want to lose the thought while I was speaking on that.
See, now, Sister Janice, I'm just right this. Now, you're a young lady. When you get my age, sometimes, people say, now you tend to blur it in. I have to say it because otherwise I just may just forget it. And then by the time you come, you say, what you gonna say? I don't know what I was gonna say. So, but you're young, so you should be able to hold it in there a little bit longer. So if you're struggling, just think about me.
Well, what I wanted to say to that is when someone does express something like that, you don't have to feel a pressure of being an expert. You don't have to feel a pressure of like, how do I respond? I have to say the right thing. I have to do the right thing. Like, it's okay. I think there's a couple of things that you can do that are practical and, easy-ish. The first one is just to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to what they have to share.
Very good. So
If they're
true.
sharing how they feel. And then as you're listening, be very, very, very careful with your facial expressions. And I feel like that's the hardest part of listening sometimes, especially when I know we're working with some students. If they say something to me, I want to be like, wait, what? And my face can't do that. Not if I want them to continue to trust talking to me. I have to like fix my face and just take it in like, oh, okay. Okay. So listening and, be careful of your facial expressions and also not just your facial expressions, but even your responses too. Um, and then I would say reflect feeling. And so to reflect feeling, you sort of just summarize what someone just said. So if I just told you, the sky is blue and it's raining outside, and so because of that, I'm really sad. If you're listening to me and you might reflect feeling by saying something like, I hear you saying that it's gloomy outside and you're kind of sad because of it.
Mhm.
All that was like a paraphrase of what I just said.
Mhm.
But what that does to the person who is expressing themselves to you, it tells them that you heard them and that you care enough to like get it, because you're asking like, is this what I heard? And I think doing that can be a part of the healing process. That doesn't mean that it's over, but it does mean that a lot of times people just want to know that someone heard them and that they value them and what they have to express or say. And so listening and then reflecting, feeling. And then I think the third very important thing is to get help. Don't be an expert. Don't try to be one.
Right.
Don't like go read books on this stuff. Listen, reflect, feeling, and then find somebody with like a degree to get you some help. I think those are really important to do.
Also, with the reflecting feeling, it's also, I'm hearing you say that, well, what does that mean to you? So now, are you letting them know that you hear it? You're giving them a chance to actually verbalize how they're feeling. So I think that's important. Christine, like you wanted to say something.
No, I agree with all of those for sure. A lot of people just want to be heard, and maybe they don't get that a lot. And then even with the reflective feeling, it's a sense of validation, like, yeah, it is gloomy outside, and allowing them that space to feel heard and validated in their feelings because their feelings do matter. And then, yeah, great point of just seeking out help, and you don't have to be the end all be all for that person. But I think all those are very good points. Just your body, if it's in person, your body language, because suicide isn't taboo. It's something that people deal with, suicidal ideations, every day. So when you hear those things, just not responding right away and like, okay, what can we do? But just really listening to them and making them feel heard and valued in that space, and then moving forward to help them.
And so another statistic that says 12.2 million people seriously in 2020 thought about suicide. 12.2 million. That's a lot of people thought about it. 3.2 million made a plan for suicide. 1.2 million attempted suicide. And these are actually the numbers or statistics that are out there. But oftentimes, some statistics, some suicides are not reported. And depends on who's reporting it. Sometimes they don't want the family to know the person committed suicide. Sometimes because of insurance reasons, they don't want. So it's underreported. Someone gets in an accident, that could be, run into a tree. That could be, a suicide attempt, maybe an accident, maybe a suicide. You have daredevils who do, wild things. One of the things I was going to say too, I think you mentioned something, Christine, and made me think. A lot of times people feel like that they're the only one. You're talking about validating. Sometimes people feel like nobody knows what I'm going through. Nobody feel like, and I'm the only. And you have a sense that you are the only person. And the old saying is misery loves company. I hate to say it's kind of true. You it makes you feel good. No, I ain't the only one. Feel like crap sometimes. Pardon the expression. Other people go through it. And so that makes you feel good. Well, I'm not just totally. I'm not totally. Another thing too is never go off what someone says, as they're joking or they're kidding, I've heard some people say, well, if you don't talk about it, then they won't do it, and so they're afraid to address it, and many times my clients, I'll say, well, have you considered suicide? It's okay to say because sometimes people think if I say that, then that mere suggestion is going to cause, that's not going to do it. Sometimes you just have to say, have you thought about committing suicide? And they'll be honest with you. I really have. For the most part, I mean, some might, but the most part, I have. And what causes you? Why do you feel like? And you can walk them through the process. I've had clients, I've dealt with that, and by the time we get finished, talking about situation, well, tell me, why do you feel this way? What's going on with you? What makes? And then when we start talking, and they begin to say, you know what, these are not as bad as they appear to be. But when many times people have a sense of hopelessness, and that's what really causes them to feel the way. And it's their view, is how they look at themselves, how they look at those around them. Sister Jamie says, Pastor, yes, and you're and are doing it, knowing God, and the millionaire that owned Bath and Body Works took his life unbeknown to his family. That's so true. Money is not it's not about money. I tell a lot of young people, all these young guys want to be rappers. Man, I ain't never seen so many young folks want to be rappers in my life. I used to teach in the school system, substitute resource teacher, and all these young boys said, I want to be a rapper. I said, well, do you have something else to fall back on if you don't become a rapper? And some of them really think they're going to be a rapper, and they put everything in there. And so, you have to let them know that they think that that's the life. Money's going to make you happy. And so what happens is, you worked all your life to get to the top. When I was on suicide line, one of them had a gentleman who was a millionaire. He said, I stepped on so many people to get to the top. Once I got to the top, I found it was a lonely life. Mm-hmm. And that's why he said, I don't have no friends. He said, my own family doesn't want to be bothered with me. And so a lot of times people think money, and there's a list of millionaires and these rappers and these actors and these performers. Why you think they're taking drugs? Because they're trying to alter the way they feel. They're not happy. And so then that's where, as a spiritual person comes in, we can tell them that we really know the answer, and that God can help them if they'll let him. But I tell people, if you don't commit suicide, die to the old man and be born again. Whereas sacrifice, give God your life, and try that. So it's really important that we address this right here, because when we look at statistics of people who are contemplating suicide, and we have to help people to recognize those signs, because I guarantee somebody that we know is contemplating suicide. We can't look at how successful they are, how popular they are, how well dressed they are, how much money they have. And then some people too have emotional issues. It's psychological, physiological changes, physiological issues that they have, and they may have to take drugs, because some people are in constant states of depression and they don't even know why they're depressed. They've tried. I had a client one time that every session he would just cry. He would come to a session just crying. I almost made me want to cry. That's all I'll say it was. And I'm trying to hang in there with, but we were able to talk through positive thinking and allow him, because when we say positive thinking, it's not always saying, hey, it's going to be okay, but help them to see it for themselves. Because it's not enough you say, you can't just tell a person, hey, your life ain't as bad as what you think it is, because that's your view. So what you have to do is connect with how they're viewing, and why do you feel this way? What makes you think that your life is worth? What makes you think, and help them to be able to process things from a more positive view, because sometimes people are looking at, again, young and old, they're looking for from a different view. They're seeing things, and I think all of us are extremely critical of ourselves. especially women, I'm going to talk about them, but women are extremely critical of themselves, and they have a high demand to perform. You have to be this ideal person, and and so you have to look this, have every hair in place, eyelashes, nails, all this right here, the lipstick, lip gloss, you name it, boom, 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 boom. And then you think you're looking good, and then somebody said, girl, one of your friends, all the friends, I said, girl, you forgot to such and let the air out of you. Then all of a sudden you're thinking, man, I can't even get that right, Well, you ladies go, I'll let you talk.
I feel like there's a lot that was said. So on January 30th of this year, we lost a former Miss USA to suicide, Chelsea Christ. And that unfortunately was my birthday. And so one thing that and that for so many different reasons that like hit really hard for me. But she was someone, she wasn't just a former Miss USA. She was a lawyer. She was a correspondent on national television, former athlete. So she's very lean and fit, and, by all sorts of people's standards, she's absolutely gorgeous. She's brilliant. And so someone might look and say, what? Why? She is everything I've ever dreamed of. She reached goals that so many people could never, or have never even considered, or, gave up on. And so I think that, again, going back to comparison being something we really have to worry about. Often when we feel negative feelings or thoughts, we tend to deny them. We try to resist those feelings, or we try to numb those feelings. And when we do that, it doesn't allow us to be honest with where we are. And so I think we really have to be honest with, I'm not feeling great today. Instead of just, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. I'm blessed and highly favored. I'm too blessed to be stressed. And you might be too blessed to be completely stressed, because hopefully you learn how to cast all your cares. But at the same time, I think it's okay to be honest with how you're feeling, because you can't address anything unless you acknowledge it. And so I think, like, to one of your first points, I think that you have to be okay with feeling whatever it is that you feel, and know that, like, from a spiritual standpoint, God can handle it. I was in service on Sunday, and the pastor said, like, even in the book of Psalms, so why art thou disquieted in me? So, like, I'm literally addressing how I'm really feeling. God's not afraid of those thoughts. And I think that if we learn to give those things to him, then we have a better chance of allowing God to heal us, because unless you address it, you can't heal it. And I think even for the fact that there are some pastors that unfortunately have either been depressed or have had suicidal ideation or attempts, or even worse, there's a difference between knowing God and believing God. So you might know who he is, you might talk about him, but unless you allow him in every space of your life, and to say, I'm going to fully trust him, even in the areas that, like, I want to hold on to, I want to have control over, then when you allow God to do that, you have a chance of being more healthy and whole. And also, like, again, I feel like most of those people may feel like they don't have an outlet. So finding an outlet to express yourself, go run, go paint, go sing, pull the blinds down and just dance. Even if you can't dance, like, just do something to express yourself and get those things out. I think it's really important.
I think self-care is so important, And you were talking about the model, the effort that it takes, and some ladies want to be glamorous and but the effort it takes to do that. I've heard some women take 2 hours to get their makeup on, 2 or 3 hours. That's a long time. That takes a lot of energy. To the effort it takes, and the effort it took her to be what she was. I never forget, I had a young guy when I worked suicide in Christ. A young guy was probably about 13 years old. He was an honor student. And so he told me, he said, I want to commit suicide because I have so much, the expectations, my parents want me to excel, the teacher, everywhere I go. And it was so hard for him. He was an A student. And he said, so I don't want to let them down, so he's pushing. I said, well, I asked him, I said, do you think that you would let them down if you committed suicide? How do you think they would feel about that? He never thought about that. He was more concerned. He was dealing with the pressure to perform. I said, it's okay, to tell them that I'm not all right with this. Sometimes we, our friends, have to feel that they can be transparent with us and we not judge them. Hey, what's wrong with you? We have to be able to. One thing I saw on one of your videos just this weekend, you're very transparent on your page, and you were saying something. You said, "I was so humble today." And you went to talk about how it was an humbling experience, and I thought that's wow. She's just putting it out there, but. And I think that's a good thing to be able to do that. I mean,
So for those who don't know, I did a halo braid in my hair. My hair has been short for 2 years, and I finally started growing it out. But a halo braid used to take me literally 5 minutes and 2 bobby pins. But whatever day it was, it took me a half hour. My hand cramped up twice, and I had at least 8 bobby pins in my hair and 3 of those itty bitty rubber bands to try and hold it together, and it was still falling out on one side. So that's what he was referring to. And I was humbled. My hair humbled me that day.
Yeah. So, it's important to be able to laugh at yourself. I think that's so important to be, you were able to laugh at. See, where you were able to laugh at someone else, that could be almost like the straw that broke the camel's back, is how you view yourself, allow yourself to laugh, allow yourself to be able to make a mistake. And, because some people say, I can't get nothing wrong. Look at this, my hair, I spent all that time and just not, and it becomes a ripple effect. It becomes a downward spiral. You got to be able to just laugh at yourself, and laugh and not take yourself so serious, you know what I mean? And that's so important. Sister Deborah says, Laura said, how can a person not internalize feelings that may cause depression? How and when does one know to seek help? A very good question. I'm going to let you ladies answer that before I say anything.
Can you put the question back up?
Okay, sorry.
Please. I think first off, by just finding someone to talk to and express those things. Kind of like we stated earlier, communication and just knowing that your feelings are valid and they do, you feel that way for a reason is so important. I think that's the first step, like expressing emotions and being able to validate your emotions and know that having those emotions, it's okay. We are all human and do have emotions. How and when does one know when to seek help? This is a tough question for me. I feel like a lot of people tend to seek help after something traumatic happens, or when things are very, very chaotic, which is obviously okay. But I feel like there's a lot of things that a lot of times with situations I've seen that people feel like they have been okay, but once they start seeking help and start going to therapy, they start uncovering things that might have happened in childhood, or they start uncovering things that might have happened in their relationship, start making those connections to where they're like, okay, this is why I think the way I do now. This is why I engage in these behaviors now. I think getting help doesn't have to be meeting with someone twice a week, once a week. It could just have one bi-weekly therapy sessions, or just going to a local self-help group or something of that sort. I don't think it has to be as intense as people make it, but some people need those spread out sessions, or so things do not get to that point of, breakdowns or depressive episodes.
If I can add to that, I think of this in like 2 different spaces. One is preventative and one is like reactive. So before having those feelings that might cause depression, I would say fill yourself up. Think on things that are pure and lovely. Think on things that will build you up. So remind yourself of who you are. So if you are a spiritual person, you literally might need to have like on your phone or, written on the bathroom mirror or something, something that says that you were made in the image of God, or that like remind yourself that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Remind yourself that God thinks good things for you, and that no matter what is going on, you know that all things are going to work together for your good. Like having those constant reminders will like the more you chew on them, the more like it will become what you're thinking. You know, you are what you eat. It's not just about like your food, but anything that you ingest is what you become. And so be careful and be aware of what you're putting into your systems, either with your ears, with your eyes, the things that you say about yourself, the things that you know are taking in. I think all of that really matters from like a preventative, like so before you're having any of those negative thoughts or feelings. And then like after, like if you begin to have those thoughts and feelings, which is natural too, it's natural to have doubt, it's natural to be critical of yourself, it's natural. One, give yourself grace. So don't beat yourself up like, why am I thinking this again? Because you're a human being and it happens. But I think it's really important to try, and I used to tell students to imagine a light switch, like turn off certain thoughts or feelings and turn on others. So try and think of whatever it is that you're thinking that's negative, think of the opposite feeling. So if my thought is, you know, I haven't, you know, certain accomplishments I haven't made yet. And so that means like, you know, I'm worthless. If I'm having that feeling, then the opposite of that is I am valued and like nothing is going to waste. And so like repeating that in my head, like literally out loud is good. I also just want to recommend there's a book called Soundtracks by John Acuff. It's either Acuff or Acuff, but it's called Soundtracks. It's a blue book, but it's really, really good. And it touches on retraining your thinking patterns so that you will begin to, and it all it is repetition. So really what I just said, but it explains it in book form, which is like really more eloquently put. But by doing that, you're retraining your thought patterns to think those things and to replace those negative soundtracks with positive ones. And I think those are like they're really good habits to form to get yourself on the right path. But I do think, like what Christina says, talk to someone, a therapist, because having those soundtracks that are positive is good, but it doesn't address the root cause of what had you had those feelings in the first place. And so I don't want to like jump over that or skip over that. I still think that's really necessary.
And to your point too, I think like one of the biggest things is the saying, you know, an idle mind is devil's playground. And I think that is so true. You know, you start to get in those negative thinking patterns, and, you know, we know it as cognitive distortions. I think everybody should take a look at the most 10 common cognitive distortions, and you'd be surprised at how many thinking patterns you might have. You know, we catch
What is
ourselves
that
in every day.
cognitive distortion? What does that mean?
So trying to think if I can explain it or just give an example. There's certain thinking patterns that might not have any
It's not rational.
yeah, they're irrational. They don't have any, not any value, but
Validity to it.
to challenge them, because if you like challenge, check the facts to see if they're accurate or not.
Right.
So I mean, for something like so simple, talking, and you were talking about, you know, being positive. I know sometimes I have to check myself too in the morning. It's like, oh, today's not going to be a good day. What evidence do I have of that? You know, I'm speaking that into the atmosphere. I'm not only speaking into the atmosphere, but I have no evidence of if that is going to happen or not. I'm not God.
Right.
I can't determine that. So with those two things alone, waking up, saying, you know, reading scripture, saying, you know, today's going to be a good day. That those little changes in training your brain, or waking up and saying positive affirmations, like you were saying, saying those positive things and repetition, you'd be surprised about how much that alone can change things. And then just challenging those cognitive distortions.
You know, another cognitive distortion say, I'm so stupid, I'm so dumb. And then you begin to speak that into yourself, and you can be brilliant. There are people are people who can sing, you know. And I remember when I used to take speech in undergrad school, I took a speech class and I gave a speech, and at the end I said, oh, I did terrible, because there's a lot of things I wanted to include, but I forgot to include it. And I said, oh, I messed up but no one knew what I left out. And so I'm judging myself on what my intention was. So sometimes we are overcritical of ourselves, and we can't be. One of the scriptures I give this to my clients, and I'll tell them Philippians 4:8. And we talk about positive self-talk is so important. Positive self-talk. So I said, find, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if they're being virtue, if they're being praised, think on these things. And so you have to ask yourself sometimes, what am I thinking? Am I thinking positive all the time? Am I thinking negative? Am I critical? Sometimes people are so critical, but by the same token, those around you, some people have been brought up in an environment where they have been criticized. Parents, no positive self-talk from the parents. Parents criticize, you can't do anything wrong, And so I've had a lot of clients that they've been wounded by their parents because the parents have never encouraged them, supported them, and the expectation of the parents were for them to be failures. And many times when I really when we really probe into it, is because the parents really have issues themselves, and they project their hurt onto that child, and becomes a cycle. And you have to break that cycle. So they're to answer her question, a lot of times people internalize it because they've been told. They play the same record over and over again. I'm no good, and I'll never amount to anything. And positive self-talk is so important. It's so important how you talk. And I wrote a book called The Eye of the Believer, and it deals with how we perceive things. I deal with the natural eye. I've had 3 eye surgeries, and I deal with how we view things in the natural and relate the natural eye to the spiritual eye, and how we view things, how we develop our world view. And so there's so many things we develop, and that affects our future. So, and then, sometimes one of the things too, in our initial assessment, is sometimes we have to focus on medication. There are some medication that can alter the way that you feel about yourself. And you may not even be aware. It may be, medication may be for one thing, but it has a side effect. So one of the things I always tell people too, check the medicine that you're taking. Sometimes the doctor's not even aware of the medication that they're taking. And so you have to, be your own advocate and say, how long have I felt this way? What has changed? Has my medication changed? And that's a good start. So we have to think about that. That's a very good question. So Jamie says, constructively, each psychologist and therapist should also seek help, right? I agree with you. Statistics say 58 to 65, 100,000 commit suicide, and 31% have mental illness. That does not keep them from becoming a professional life. To be honest with you, Sister Jamie, very good question. A lot of therapists, I've had cohorts in undergrad and graduate school. They knew the stuff because they were actually, they were in the system. They knew all the terminology. This is new to me. They lived it, so they know it. And the same thing with police officers. A lot of police officers are young men that have been abused, and they want to get out of their life. And so statistics are high in that area as well. So you're right. They do. We all need therapists. I remember when I was going in grad school, we had to have a mandatory 8 weeks group therapy session. And I told my wife that I am not going to get in that session and spill all my guts. Because, some folks like to spill all their guts. I said, I ain't getting there and spill all my guts. First week, I didn't say nothing. I just kind of listened. Second week, I just listened. Third week, I was spilling my guts. Another thing, when I was 13 years old. Well, it wasn't that bad, but I was more involved because I really got the benefit. So we were all sharing together. So you really don't understand what a need you have to express yourself, and sometimes until you actually do it. We all have needs. Sometimes people have so much bottled up within them, and it's like, you heard the expression, like a time bomb waiting to explode. And so and then sometimes especially when preachers, we try to be the model person. You know, pastors' wives said that too. They try to be the model person, and I can't show any certain things because I have to represent my past. Sometimes pastors put that pressure on the wife that you have to be this, and I want you to be this right here. And so there's so much pressure that they're dealing with. You know, and so you recently would elevate to your position. So now that's increased pressure. So you have to have the ability to be able to be yourself even in that position, because now you're at a different level, and people say, well, you're supposed to be this. This is what people tell you. You're supposed to be this, and people will put that on you, and so that becomes a challenge. But I remember when, now this is before, I don't know if you two were born. You two probably weren't born. Yeah, you probably weren't born close to it. The Challenger, when the Challenger exploded, the Apollo Challenger,
That was 86, wasn't it?
something like that.
I'm 87, so yeah.
And I know you weren't born, Christy. So I was working with suicide as a crisis line, and the lines lit up
Yeah,
like a Christmas tree. And you know what people say? I'm so depressed, and they were wanting to commit suicide because they were hurting, because that Challenger, all these astronauts were in the Challenger and and blew up, and they were killed. So sometimes circumstances and situations can become so overwhelming to a person that they don't know how to handle. Some people can't handle conflict. Some people are too empathetic. And when I say too empathetic, you are more concerned about the welfare of other people than you are your own self. And you never want to get to the point that you are so concerned about other people, than yourself, unless you can do something about it. Jesus Christ was the only one who gave his life, but he gave his life for a redemption. You're not going to get nothing out of it when you give me your life. So you have to work on self-care, not to take care of yourself. So your mental state, and you have to know, I always say this all the time. Clint Eastwood said it. Not that I'm, Clint Eastwood fan, but he says on one of his movies, said, "Man ought to know his limitations." I think that is so true. Every last one of us need to know our limitations. It's okay to say, is this a little more than I can handle? I've learned, the older I get, I've learned to set boundaries. I take clients 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I have people say, will you do Thursday? Will you do Friday? Will you do Saturday? I said, no. I set those boundaries. I will pay you double. I said, no. I have to think for a second now, being transparent, because you have to have boundaries, because if you wear yourself out mentally, you can become mentally, emotionally drained, and that can affect you. You can put so much on yourself and you can become overwhelmed. And then when you become overwhelmed, you're full of stress, you're full of anxiety, and all that just adds on. And before you know it, boom, it's, I think the scripture says it's a little fox that destroy the vine. So there's a lot of little things that can happen, adds up. And most people really think about one of the things, greatest cause is just being overwhelmed too much, dealing with too much. Some people try and deal with everybody else's problem and not, in denial of their own problems, until all of a sudden it hits them. Making bad choices too. Making bad choices can lead to depression, which leads to suicidal ideations, which could lead to suicide. We have a few. We went past 9:00, and Monday's kind of difficult. We're gonna give about 5 more minutes or so. Have another question, Sister Walden. Okay, I missed you that time, Sister Walden. True, Pastor Walden. I don't know what I said was true, because she put that about 5 or 10 minutes ago. So, amen, Bishop. We need to learn to say no. That's true. I've learned to say no. It's hard, and you want to help everybody. You can't be the savior of the world. You can't help everybody. It's a learning process. But suicide is definitely. We just began to scratch the surface, really, because again, when you think of a pastors who are committing suicide, there's a reason. And then there's and I don't deal with this a whole lot, but there are such things as generational curses.
Mhm.
But you have, as a child of God, we have to understand we have the ability to break those generational curses. What happens is if you buy into that, well, my dad, and I come from a rough family on my dad's side, and a lot of them had some unique challenges. But I made up my mind I was not going to be a victim. I was the first one. I was first one. I was out with one of my nephews. He said, as Walton Men's got kind of reputation, and I said, well, this is the one that had decided to break the mold, and because your dad did this or your mom did this doesn't mean that you have to lock yourself into that, and you have to believe in yourself and believe in the power of God to help you. And sometimes you have to deal with therapeutic counseling. Sometimes you need spiritual counseling as well, and they both go hand in hand together, So, and then sometimes I tell people, some people deal with depression. Some people have to take medication. I mean, I'm a firm believer in faith, but I think some people need medication. If you have to do whatever it takes, to help you, to lead the best quality of life that you can. And I will say this right here. I've talked to a lot of pastors' wives who tell me, you know what, my husband and I need therapy, but my husband refuses to go to therapy. And I can look and tell that they are so depressed. And so you got this, and I tell them, well, maybe you have to get therapy for yourself. You have to see someone for yourself. But you cannot be in a situation where you're under a whole lot of stress. And it's okay. Some things are, you can't blame yourself. See, sometimes we want to blame ourselves. You're never responsible for somebody else's actions. You're never responsible for anybody else's action. And when you look at that, it can affect you. But I'm not responsible for anything Christina does. Yeah, I'm not responsible, and God knows she ain't responsible for nothing I do. All we have to do is I love her and support her. You know what I mean? She makes a mistake, I'm gonna be there, and I don't want her to feel like if she made a mistake or whatever. Oh man, you have to be accepting. We need to learn how to be, especially in the church. I'm gonna say this, we have to be accepting of people in church, because if a person makes a mistake and we beat them down, they're not going to grow. They're not going to learn. They're not going to grow. So you have to be accepting. Say, hey, you know what? You made a terrible mistake, but that's all right. We still love you unconditional. That's how God did us. He loves us unconditional. And we have to learn in the church how to love people unconditional and not make people feel like that you have to be the model person. Not saying that it gives you an excuse to just act any kind of way, act a fool, but you are human, so you're subject to make mistakes, and you have to be willing to be accepting of other people. Okay, we're just about ready to wrap this up. We have one more. We're going to answer with Sister Morel. God bless Sister Morel. Say amen. All the way down, and you know what you say?
Can I jump in real quick? I know it's like time.
You got to be quick. Okay. It's your turn now.
Well, it's my turn now. No. There was something you said about not needing to feel like the model person. And we're not supposed to continue in sin so that grace may abound, right? We're supposed to allow grace to do its perfect work. And I think like that's where the humanity and where our Holy Spirit can really tap in, when we recognize and say, I am human. And even as a leader in a spiritual sense, you can say, or you don't have to be like completely out, letting the whole world know all your business. But I think being transparent is important, and it helps people who are working to become believers to increase their faith, because you can say like, I really do struggle, but I'm leaning on grace, and it is because of grace that I have the power to overcome some of the things that I've been thinking or feeling or ways that I've been behaving. And if as a leader I can be honest and transparent and say that, it helps people to see that this faith walk is a real thing. And I think that's what a lot of people in this world are looking for. They're looking for people to be transparent and real. And so as we work to do that, we don't have to be models. In fact, I think it's great that we show that we're not, because if we're superstars, we don't need Jesus. And so we've got to show like, yeah, I need him. Otherwise, it's a whole mess. And so I think that as believers, especially those who are trying to win others, it's okay to show that. In fact, I think it's good to show that.
Right. That's so true. I appreciate you sharing that. It's we've got to be able to. I think too, you have to know who you can talk to. Talk to someone who is someone who has compassion, someone who has wisdom, someone who has knowledge. And you talk to someone who has. I try to use my words. Have someone who lacks wisdom, then they're not going to be able to help you. They're going to hurt you. You see what I'm saying? And some people, if you talk to wrong people, some people you can come share with them, and you feel worse after you get finished talking to them than you did when you talked to them. And you have to check yourself out. I never want to make anyone feel worse after they talk to me than they did before they talked to me. But sometimes we human. Sometimes we miss the ball. All right, we all need Jesus. So true, Miss Marie. We all need Jesus, and we all need help, and we just have to be honest. So we in this thing together. From grace to grace, but His grace is sufficient for us. Said knowing it's the goodness of God that leads us to repentance. Knowing it's the goodness of God and the grace of God that makes me want to be the best I can be, not make me want to just feel like I can do anything. But man, God loved me so much. I want to be the best me that I can be, and I have to ask God to help me to be the best me I can be. There's only one me. Thank God, there's only one Anthony Walton. So I have to just be the best version that I can be. And sometimes I have to do a do-over. Instead of taking your life, do a do-over. Say, you know what? Let me change some things in my life. Let me redo some things in my life. And if anyone's on here that's contemplating suicide, inbox me, call me, because I never want to hear a friend of mine, a family member, anyone, don't be ashamed. I think that's what stops people from getting help is the shame of saying, hey, they're not going to see me. They want to see me as being perfect, but if I tell them that they're not going to see me, they're going to see me as being a flaw. We're all flawed. That's a surprise. The surprise is that ain't no surprise that we all are flawed. And so reach out to someone, call someone, tell someone, feel free to inbox me. This is Suicide Awareness Month. And I will say this right, take time to call someone. I told the church on yesterday, I hope folks from the church are listening, or if you weren't at church on yesterday, okay, I've asked everyone, call 5 people, not someone that you've talked to. Call 5 people, or take 5 people this week and just tell 5 people that you love them and you appreciate them, not somebody that you've already, because you don't know how important it is. You don't know who's hurting. Someone somewhere, some devil's telling them nobody cares about you, and that's not true. I've seen people commit suicide and the church was full packed. And I heard the family say, if they only knew that this many people care for them. Sometimes we care, we just don't say it. So Kristen, I want you to know I love you, honey. My baby, I love you. Love you too, Janice. Denise, I love you too. I love your energy. She's so full of energy on her page, man. You're bubbling energy. I wish I could put that in a bottle, man. She's 24/7 energy. All right. So
Thank you so much. Love y'all.
All right, listen. Thank you for all candid, honest advice. Listen, we're gonna wrap up. I'm gonna let you go first, Christina. Give 60 seconds, 30 or 60 second final wrap up, Christina.
I would just say take care of your mental health. We tell our clients and I work more so on the natural side, challenge those negative thoughts. But as believers, we have the word to challenge those anxious thoughts. So I would encourage people to stand strong. There's scriptures for all the emotions. So look into that. And then I would also say, when I think you guys talked about it a little bit earlier, but be careful who you talk to and be careful who you let talk to you. All those things can have a hold on your mental health. And even I think Pastor said about what you hear, what you see. Just really quickly, me and my friend were talking in Atlanta about what's his name, Jeffrey Dahmer. There's a
serial killer.
Huh? Yes. So there is
How are you doing a conversation about a serial killer?
There's a documentary on Netflix that just came out, and I kind of like.
I know if I had locked my door tonight or something.
No, but I say that to say there's a documentary that just came out. I'm like, okay, this sounds good. You want to see, and then before I started watching, I started seeing things on social media, and then my friend actually was telling me how she watched it, and if you are not careful, things, long story short, if you're not careful, things you watch can creep into your spirit, and you don't want to let those things into your home, your mind. So I was like, I know myself, I'll be thinking about stuff. So I'm gonna just not watch it. So I'd say that to say, just be careful what you watch, what you listen to, who you let in your ear, and then it's okay to get help. It's okay to talk to somebody. And you are loved. We love you. There's always someone out there who cares for you, who wants best for you, and continue to fight.
Very, very good. I agree with what you said, Kristen. You have to be very careful. You have to watch what you watch on TV too.
Yeah.
So some of these shows, now I do tend to watch the news quite a bit. That news can kind of get you depressed. If you watch it so much of, I had to cut the news off. Like I haven't watched it, but I do like to watch the news. I didn't watch it the whole weekend. Didn't watch any news. But man, you listen to this right here, you hear over and over and over again. You have to have a balance. You can't just listen to negativity all the time, because that's what's going to get in your spirit. Sometimes, some of this sad music, you listen, music can have effect on you. So many things can affect you and bring you down. So you got to be careful. Is this affecting my spirit? Does this bring me down? Then I have to change my appetite. If every time I get finished talking to Johnny, I feel less about myself. And I'll say this to ladies, because I deal with a lot of, if you're dealing with a guy that makes you feel, that's critical of you, that makes you feel that you're not, have very low value, cut them off, run for the hills. I don't care what the flip side is, because a person care for you is not going to try to make you feel less than what you say. Their job is to build you up. It will not get better. So you don't want to be around somebody. That's depressing right there. You're around somebody who is critical of you, and you can never be right with them, no matter what you do, no matter what change. Because mainly when it comes to guys, that's their own insecurity. And I'm going from dealing with suicide to deal with relationship issues, but I can't help myself. I can't go into this. So that's free of charge. No charge for that, but. And those are things that cause a lot of young ladies to be depressed, because it's some guy, because he's insecure. The only way he can be secure is making you feel less than the person that you are. Don't watch The Beast. Okay, Sister Jamie said, don't watch The Beast. You ain't got to tell me twice. I ain't gonna watch it. I got some preachers, man, that love to watch horror movies. One preacher, man, he's a big time fan. He said, man, the gorier the better. I don't watch that kind of stuff. I can't watch that gory stuff, man. I just can't do it. All right. Thank you, Christina. Pastor Denise.
Sure. The Bible says, above all else, I pray that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. God doesn't just want us to have salvation. He wants us to live an abundant life. That's why Jesus said he came. He literally said, I came that you might have life, and that more abundantly. Amen. So first, I would just encourage you to believe that abundant life is something that is for you. Believe that. Even, you're trying to figure out, well, how do I get it? Well, first, believe that you have access to it. Believe that it is yours and you can have it no matter what you've experienced, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've said, no matter anything. Abundant life is yours, and you have access to it simply because you once you get to a point where you just accept that you want to be connected and allow him to really move and change things in your life. This was not supposed to be all about that, but I got off on a tangent and I got stirred. So let me finish my thought. But
yeah, that's no problem. Your turn now, remember?
I know, right? It's my turn now. I also just want to say that even Jesus and his examples, he had good friends. There were a lot of people that followed Jesus, but he had 12 disciples. And even beyond that, he had 3 that stuck one and when it was really close. And he had to go and do some serious praying to figure out if he was going to follow through with what he knew he was supposed to do, right? And so what that also says is know who your circle is, know who you can really trust. And we've all talked about that. And I think that just hitting on that is really, really important to recognize that. And, give yourself grace. And forgiveness, the Bible in Colossians, I think chapter 3 talks about like forgiving one another as you've been forgiven. That forgiveness can release you from some of those negative thoughts too. And it's not just forgiving of other people. It's also forgiveness of yourself, forgiveness of yourself for shame and everything else. So believe that you have access to everything that God has for you, and you will begin to see things change in your life. I really believe that.
So true. Very good. Thank you, ladies. I certainly appreciate you all being on here. May have to have you all on here again. You did a tremendous job. Didn't have enough time. There's so many areas and dimensions that we can deal with suicide. I want to encourage someone, if you're contemplating suicide, talk to someone. There's a number. There's a suicide hotline that you can call if it's very bad. I think with 222 is one number, but there is, and I'm sorry I had the number. There's a dedicated number now that you can call for suicide crisis line. I don't know if it's 88, maybe 88. I don't want to give the wrong number, but you can always call 911 and tell them I want to be connected with suicide line. Or when I used to be a telephone operator, years ago, I used to be a telephone operator. They called the operator for everything. They called me, asking what time it was the weather's like. If someone where to commit suicide, they called me, operator, I'm thinking about committing suicide. But I don't know, Janice, you're looking it up. But there's a number to
988.
There you go. I knew it's 987. I don't want to get the wrong number. That'd be terrible. I don't want to get the wrong number. Another thing, don't learn how to laugh yourself. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Sometimes we put more pressure on ourselves. Do not put too much pressure on yourself. Allow yourself, as Janice said, allow yourself to make mistakes. Allow yourself to be human. Laugh yourself. Also, when I said sometimes women have male friends that make them feel less than, sometimes you have to be careful select who your girlfriends are too, because girls can be critical, and sometimes they can be feel insecure, or I hate to say jealous, and they want to make you feel bad. Because again, what we said earlier, misery love company, they're not happy, so they want to make you happy. Sometimes if you're upbeat, they don't want to see you upbeat. What's wrong with you? You're upbeat all the time. So I've had friends tell me, what's wrong with you? You upbeat all the time. Hey, I'm not gonna be sad. Encourage yourself in the Lord. You got to encourage yourself. Another thing I tell my client, pat yourself on the back sometime. Ain't nothing wrong with patting yourself on the back, saying, I'm okay. I did a good job. Celebrate yourself. Listen, we love you. Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of It's My Turn Now. Feel free again to share this right here. A lot of times we have people who have I just saw I think I saw. Okay, I thought I saw a message. Feel free to reach out to someone. No matter what you're going through, it's not the end. Realize that you have value. Anytime everyone, God makes no mistakes. You have value. You may not see your sense of value. And I tell people, as a young person, I thought I couldn't do anything right. I had some tremendous challenges that I had, and I never saw myself doing anything. I tell a lot of times when I go out preaching, I remember my uncle came into the house. We had him over dinner. He said, who would have thunk it? He did not realize that God would bless him to the level. I didn't realize it. Don't take your life because you don't know what difference a day makes. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow's a better day. Hang on in there and trust in God and get the help you need. We love you. God bless you. Thanks again for joining us on this episode. You be blessed. Have a blessed